Hello everyone, I am Robbie from IELTS Coach Pro, and today's video is called Keywords and Scanning for IELTS Reading, and it's the first video in our IELTS Method Mondays series. And if you're not a subscriber yet, you definitely want to click the subscribe button if you're preparing for IELTS, because these IELTS Methods videos are going to be key for helping you to get a high score in IELTS. Because IELTS has so many different types of questions, it's confusing and complicated, but if you have a special method for each type of question, you really can get a high score and you can get correct answers really quickly using these methods. So today, the video we're looking at, Keywords and Scanning, is foundational for IELTS reading. So in our other videos, we're going to be talking about finding keywords in questions and scanning for answers in all different types of questions. But if you don't know how to find keywords in a question and scan a reading passage for those keywords, you're going to be pretty hopeless in IELTS reading. So that's why we started with this video. And so anytime you have an IELTS reading section, you're going to have a passage and you're going to have some questions. And it's going to look like this. Step one in IELTS reading is always to read the instructions. Read the instructions and make sure you understand them and follow them, because if you don't follow the instructions for the question, you're going to get every question wrong. Even if you knew the right answer, you need to exactly follow the instructions that they give you for the section. And then step two is usually going to be to read the first question. It depends on the question type, and we'll get into that in future videos, but normally you want to start by reading the first question and underline the keywords. But what are keywords? Keywords are words that carry meaning in the question and set that question apart from all the other information in the passage. So if we look at our example, you have tons of text in this passage. You don't have time to read it all. You only have time to scan it for some keywords. And you want to choose keywords from the question that make the information in that question unique and set that information apart from all the other information in your passage. So the keywords will not be pronouns like he, she, it. They will also not be articles like a, an, and the. Most of the time your keywords will be nouns and verbs, but sometimes they might also be adjectives, adverbs. So the best keywords are going to be words in the question that are the most unique, like names or numbers. Another thing that really makes keywords really good is if a word doesn't have very many synonyms, because we'll see in a minute that when they put the answers in the passage, they don't use the same words usually that they used in the question. So usually they're going to use synonyms. But if you find a word that doesn't have any synonyms or has very few synonyms, it's going to be a better keyword because you might be able to find that exact word in the passage. Because if there's no synonym for it, then maybe they had to use that exact word in the passage. Another thing that is helpful with keywords, sometimes you want to find key phrases. So in our example, there's a phrase called preventative strategy. So two words that go together in a tight set. As you're scanning your passage, those are going to be good keywords or key phrases as well. The last thing about choosing keywords is you don't want to choose words that are the topic of the entire section. So this section is about Russia that we're going to look at. Russia would not be a good keyword because Russia is all over this passage. It's the whole topic. And so you want to choose keywords that make that question unique from the other questions and from the rest of the information in your passage. So let's look at our example here. We have a reading passage about infectious disease in Russia, and then we have a set of questions. So the first thing we want to do is read the instructions. It says, complete the sentence below choose one word only from the passage for each answer. So that means if we write 2 words or if we write a number, we're going to get the wrong answer. So it's very important we follow the instructions. All of these answers are going to be one word only. And the information is going to be from the passage as we find our answer. After we understand the instructions, the next step is to read the first question. So let's do that. Number 11 says, an outbreak of plague in blank prompted the publication of a coherent preventative strategy. So now let's break that question down part by part and see if we can choose the best keywords. So the beginning says an outbreak of plague. And this is actually not a good phrase to use for keywords because this whole passage is about plagues and diseases. So what we're looking at right now is only about a third of the full IELTS reading section that you would see if you were taking a real IELTS test. So in the full IELTS reading passage that I took this from, they have the word plague 35 times. So that's not going to be very helpful for finding the location of our answer. The word after plague is pretty helpful. It's a small word, but in is helpful because when we see the word in right before the blank, we know that the answer is going to be either a place or a month or year. Those are the only things that can follow the word in. So something like in 1937 or in Russia. So that word in is very helpful, but it's not the best word for finding the location of our answer. So we're not going to call it a keyword. If we look a little farther, prompted the publication. Those are okay. You could try those for keywords, but in my opinion, they're not the best keywords. If we move a little bit farther, of a coherent preventative strategy. In my opinion, these are the best keywords for this question because they are very unique and they are a tight 3-word phrase that goes together and is really going to help us find the answer in our passage. So coherent preventative strategy are the words that I would underline if I was taking this IELTS test. So now that we have our keywords, let's read the question one more time because it's very important to make sure you understand the question even after you found your keywords. So an outbreak of plague in blank prompted the publication of a coherent preventative strategy. Okay, now let's look over at our passage. I'm going to give you a minute and we have 3 keywords. So see if you can find any of those words in this passage or something that means the same thing as those words. So you can start searching now. Okay, the first thing that you should have noticed is the word coherent is there. So that's nice. It's a matching word. If you look here, it says, we're not designed as a coherent set of measures. So even though we found the keyword, that is not the location of our answer because it says we're not designed as a coherent set of measures. But it gives us a clue because the next phrase says, coherent set of measures to be implemented systematically at the first sign of plague. The advent of such a standard response system came a few years later. So they're leading into the place where they're going to give us the answer. Then it says the first attempts to organize procedures and carry out proactive steps. So now we're getting really close to our answer because procedures is very similar to the word strategy, and proactive is very similar to the word preventative. So the first attempts to organize procedures and carry out proactive steps to control plague date to the aftermath of the 1727-1728 epidemic in Astrakhan. So we have found our answer there, actually. The proactive steps occurred during the aftermath of the epidemic in Astrakhan. So that is how we use keywords to find the location of our answer and then choose the correct answer. Let's look at question number 12 for a little more practice. So question number 12 says, provincial governors were ordered to burn the blank and possessions of plague victims. One thing that's really nice in IELTS reading is normally the questions come in order. So as we use our keywords to find answers, we know that the answer to this question is going to come after the answer to the question that we just did. So let's look at the next couple paragraphs in this reading passage. So we have these paragraphs. The answer is going to come somewhere in here, but before we look for the answer, we want to choose our keywords. So the question says, provincial governors were ordered to burn. So governors is an okay keyword, but the word governor occurs about 5 times in the sections that we're looking at, so it's not so unique, but that word burn is super unique. You don't normally hear about people burning things, so it's something that sets this information apart. It's also a word that doesn't have very many synonyms, so we might actually find the word burn in our passage. If you look after the blank, possessions of plague victims could also be helpful, but here I think burn is the best keyword. So I'll give you a minute. Try to scan this passage and see if you can find the word burn or something similar to the word burn. Okay, if you look at the beginning of the second paragraph there, you will see not exactly the word burn, but burned, and that is close enough. So if we read that entire sentence, it says, the houses of infected persons were to be burned along with all of the personal property they contained. So personal property is very similar to the word possessions, but that's not the answer to our question. The answer to our question is looking for what was burned. And so the answer is houses, because the houses of infected persons were to be burned. And it's very important that you use the word houses, plural, not just house, because they are very strict, very picky with these answers. You need to use exactly the right form. And so you need to make sure your answer is houses if you are doing this in a real IELTS test. Hopefully you were able to find those keywords. And so we're going to move along to the last example question that we have today. This one is from the same set of paragraphs. And since it is the next question, we know that it comes after the question that we just did. So let's look at that question, number 13. Correspondence was held over a blank prior to copying it. So this one doesn't have very many words, but I think a few of them are actually good keywords. So correspondence is a pretty unique word. It means letters or some form of communication. So that's going to be helpful. And over a is helpful because it occurs right before the blank, and so it's not necessarily good for finding the location, but it is really helpful for knowing what the answer is going to be after we find the location. The thing on top is the correspondence, and the thing on the bottom is the answer that we're looking for. Then the last phrase, prior to copying it. Copying is a good keyword there because it's pretty unique, and so the keywords I underlined there are correspondence, over, and copying. So let's go back to our passage, see if you can find correspondence, over, or copying, or something that means the same thing as those words. Okay, if you look at the last sentence, that is the key sentence here. Finally, letters brought by couriers were heated above a fire before being copied. So copying is very similar to copied, and before is very similar to prior. We don't have the word correspondence, but we have the word letters. So we know we're in the right place. But what were the letters held over? Because that is what we're looking for our answer. If we see the phrase above a fire, that word fire is our answer because over a fire means the same thing as above a fire. So you didn't have the exact same words there, but you had something that means the same thing. And hopefully we were able to find our answer. Again, the answer for that one is fire. So as we did those questions, we were finding our keywords, but we were also using a very important skill called scanning. And scanning means moving your eyes quickly over a passage, looking for keywords or key phrases, and then focusing on the sentence that contains those keywords or key phrases. This is a really important skill in IELTS because you probably don't have time to read all the words in the reading passage. You just have time to move your eyes quickly over the passage and then lock your eyes in on those keywords and key phrases and then read those sentences around the keywords very carefully and understand them and make sure you understand the question and you understand the sentence where the answer is and make sure you choose the right word or words for the answer. Scanning is a skill that you can improve in. You can get better at looking over the words in the passage quickly and locating those keywords quickly and effectively. So every week when we do our reading practice, we're going to practice finding keywords and we're going to practice scanning the passage for those keywords, and we're going to do it with every type of question that they could ask you in IELTS reading. And there are a lot of them, but it's important to practice all of them because they all have a little bit different challenges and different strategies for getting the right answers quickly. And that's really important so that you can get the score you need in IELTS reading. That is the end of our video today. If you need any more help with your IELTS, you can go to www.ieltscoachpro.com. It's a great website with lots of material. We have online classes, we have one-on-one tutoring, we have speaking feedback and writing feedback. So definitely check that out if you need any help at all with your IELTS test. And if you liked this video, please click the like button, subscribe. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to tackle multiple choice questions in IELTS reading. So come back for that. Share this with your friends, and I'll see you next time.